I really enjoy you. I love you and your audience.
Welcome to Basic Core Principles. I am your brother and your host, James. I want to wish you a belated happy Thanksgiving and a very Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, and Happy New Year. Now, early this morning, 6:30 a.m. California time, I had a conversation and an interview with Lieutenant General Michael Flynn. And then about 29 minutes after my conversation with him, I jumped on a plane to come back to my home here in Utah. But I'm so excited, and it's very late as I'm putting this up. You'll probably be watching this on Wednesday morning, or that's when it'll become available. But I want to share this great information that we get to hear from Lieutenant General Michael Flynn. If you're not familiar with Lieutenant General Michael Flynn, I'm going to give you a little intro to him in just a moment. But I am truly grateful, folks, because Lieutenant General Michael Flynn's a guy I used to watch on television during the Obama administration, and he'd be in front of Congress, and I'm like, this guy is a hero. He loves our country. He loves our men and women in uniform, and I just thought he was a great and very bold man. That was around, 2012, 2013, 2014. Little did I know that 5 or 6 years later, I would get to know him personally. My first contact with him was when I was doing some analysis and some investigative work in 2020, and through a mutual friend, Patrick Byrne, who I interviewed on this program a few weeks ago. Make sure you catch that episode. There'll be a link down below. I had come across some information that needed to get confirmed, and Lieutenant General Michael Flynn contacted me and confirmed that the information I had uncovered was valid. Now, when someone who used to be a national security advisor and used to head intelligence agencies verifies that the information that you stumbled upon is accurate, you are truly grateful. And within the last year, I've been able to meet and get to know Lieutenant General Michael Flynn more personally. With my wife and I, we've got to hang out with him a couple times and over the last year and pick his brain and what have you. And he truly is a magnificent leader. And like I said, you may or may not know who Lieutenant General Michael Flynn is. So here's a little introduction before I get into our interview. Lieutenant General Michael Flynn served more than 33 years in the U.S. Army, and his military career culminated as a director of the Defense Intelligence Agency, the DIA, and as the nation's highest serving military intelligence officer.
Well, my next guest has been at the forefront of our nation's intelligence apparatus for decades. Retired Lieutenant General Michael Flynn served as director of the Defense Intelligence Agency under President Obama from 2012 to 2014. Before that, he served as director of intelligence at United States Central Command, or CENTCOM.
After retiring from the Army in 2014 and as a private citizen, General Flynn went on to serve in a variety of businesses. He's had nonprofit roles, educational, and he is a big supporter of veterans organizations throughout the country, and he continues to champion them today. His public service included selection and service as a foreign policy advisor to many of the Republican U.S. presidential candidates during the 2016 presidential race and during the Republican Party primaries. And he was subsequently appointed and served, albeit briefly, as a national security advisor to President Trump, the 45th president of the United States. Now, by the way, we discussed politics, and if you want to see the segment where we discuss politics, that's on my Patreon. The link to that will be down below. General Flynn is a national best-selling author. He holds 3 master's degrees, is a recipient of numerous military, intelligence, and law enforcement awards. He is married with 2 sons and has several grandchildren. And now, my conversation with Lieutenant General Michael Flynn. General Flynn, I am so tickled pink to have you here with me. As you know, we've known each other for a few years now. You are one of my mentors. especially in the world of leadership, which I want to get into. You are an expert, obviously, in leadership. You don't become a lieutenant general like yourself, and you don't have all the accolades and be able to lead intelligence organizations within our military and our government without having leadership skills. And when you left public service and the military in 2014, you started the Flynn Intel Group. Now, one thing I talk to my audience about is often is using what you already know to go into business for yourself. How'd that come about, and why did you do that? And tell us briefly,
Yeah.
tell us the story of how you made that transition from military and using all of your expertise into essentially a private business.
Right. So, and it's a difficult transition. It's not an easy transition, especially when you spend, in my case, almost 34 years in the military. You don't easily transition into the business world. There's a lot of similarities. Certainly, leadership is probably at the forefront. The ability to be able to lead people, small organizations, large organizations. I think that one of the things that I wanted to do is, I still consider myself very healthy. At that time, it was almost 10 years ago now. In fact, it was 10 years ago now. So I was 10 years younger. I was still young. I still feel young. I still feel very healthy. And I still want to do things to serve our country. And I always felt that my calling in life was to serve. And I decided to go into the military to serve in that capacity versus other ways to serve our nation. I mean, I tell people I was born on an Army base. All I've ever known is our military. My father was a retired sergeant from the Army, World War II and Korea War vet. Service to nation and service to community are big deals for me. It's kind of who I am. And, despite being basically, God, I mean, so many attacks on me over these past number of years, but that transition was difficult, but I learned along the path. And frankly, you're right. I went back in. I wanted to go back into the world of intelligence because that's what I knew. I have 3 master's degrees. I'm very capable of understanding the machinations of intelligence, especially open source intelligence, which was really becoming a big deal, towards the end of my military career. And I saw the need for security and organizations, the business world needing good information and good intelligence, good security, and you get into consulting. And then I found myself public speaking, doing a lot of public speaking, which I love to do. And, you can get paid to publicly speak. I really wanted to stick with veterans. I still do a lot of work with veterans. Some cases I do it behind the scenes. Some cases I do it very publicly. And I love our veterans. I pray that President Trump really takes on this issue of veteran homelessness and still veteran suicide, which is still a real issue. So I wanted to transition, but I wanted to find things that I like to do. I didn't want to try to get into something that I didn't understand. And so so Flynn Intel Group today has transitioned because all the craziness that I went through with the whole Mueller investigation, which was based on a lie. And very, very corrupt. And I do know that I do know that there's going to be some reflection on that as Trump goes into office. So I now have an organization called Resilient Patriot. That's because that's how I feel I am. I'm a resilient patriot. I've overcome, right? Talk about an overcomer, right? And a resiliency that I had to learn about myself. And this kind of gets into the leadership side. As you transition from one aspect of life to another, for anybody that's out there that goes through a tough time, goes through some, first half of their life, and then they sit there and they go, what am I going to do next? You don't feel like sitting on your laurels and doing nothing. So one of the things that I talk about a lot, James, is I talk about control. And this is a leadership principle. It's a good principle for people to understand. There are things in life that we just cannot control. I can't control what God's going to do today, right? I can't control. I can control how I speak to God. I can control how I use my faith to communicate with something that I deeply believe in. But I can't control what actions God is going to take. I can't control what actions President Trump is going to take. I can influence them. What I'm telling people, and what I tell people a lot is, especially young people, take control of the things that you can control, right? And the things that you can't control, understand what they are, understand that there are others who can do that. Like I operate at a much higher level of influence than most people, right? I understand that. So those that follow me, those that trust me, just know that I'm going to do the right things for this country, and know that I'm going to take actions based on the things that I can control. But I can't control the outcomes of everything, right? So people send me stuff all the time, James, and go, "You got to get this to Trump. You got to do, can't you get this to happen?" And the answer is not really. I mean, I can influence and I can send information in, and I do, and I do help things that matter, things that I do believe are reasonable criteria and conditions that we must consider as Americans and as the United States of America going forward. But for those people at the local level, and I use this phrase, local action has a national impact. And what that means is I'm telling you, take control of your lives and your communities, in your churches, in your companies, in your towns, in your parishes. Take control. And so many people, James, over the last 4 years that I have run into, that I have asked that. In fact, I had a phone call early this morning with an individual who I had endorsed for running for a local office, and he was just thanking me again, and it was a good conversation to kind of what's next, right? What's next for that person? If you think that you can sit there and on your couch or wherever you're sitting, yeah, take a deep breath, make it a quick one, and then get back on the field, right? Take control of what you can control. And what I know that people can control, and I'll use the sports analogy, because I like sports and I'm an athlete, get out of the bleachers, America, get onto the field, participate in this game we call democracy and freedom and liberty. Participate in that game. Do it to the best of your ability. It may be in some cases the only thing that you really can do is go and pray. And and I tell people that if you can't afford to send some money to help somebody, like we had a great conversation with a bunch of people up in Western North Carolina last night. If you can't get involved, if you don't feel comfortable getting involved, physically and personally in some kind of local community club or something like that. I know people are shy and people are hesitant. Then figure out, how do you get more involved in your church? I could control a lot of things in my life, and we ran an entire Reawaken America tour. I visited and spoke in probably well over 200 cities and towns in this country, mostly in churches over the last 4 years, because I felt compelled to let people know that our country, our nation was at risk. So that's me. That's my platform. That's what I know I can control. And my big message was, get involved at your local level, get involved in your communities, and do more for this country. That's what people can actually do. So that's my big message to everybody, to all your great listeners, your great audience, is take control of what you can control. And those things you can't, let others deal with those. And if you can influence them, fine. But take control of what you can control. That's a great leadership principle.
Wow. You have given us much to not just think about, General Flynn, but to implement and get off the bleachers. I think we all love sports analogies, and even my Mexican mother-in-law can understand that we got to get out of the bleachers and we got to get out there on the pitch, on the field, on the court, and do our part. In parting, I want to ask you, and you've kind of alluded to this already, if someone wants to develop leadership skills, because leadership skills, as you have beautifully said, there's the military, private sector, churches, organizations. And once again, you actually beat me to it. I was going to talk about at the end and thank you for all that you do in front of and behind the scenes for our veterans. It's something that in our family, we care a lot about. My father's a retired corpsman, and we just appreciate your work in that. But leave us with this parting wisdom, if you would, General Flynn. If someone wants to develop leadership skills, what are two basic things they should focus on? And you said control, so so you have given us one. Is there one or two other things that someone who wants to go out there and lead, what they should do within themselves to develop those leadership skills?
Yeah, I think that people need to read, okay? Because it's, you're not going to just go outside and start leading your neighborhood. You can try that, but I think people need to read about the great leaders of history, right? Abraham Lincoln's one. There are others, there are, like, the book on Sun Tzu is a great book, and it talks a lot about just different aspects of leaders. There's a great book, and it's it's not too old, but it's called America's First Battles, and it really starts off with George Washington and the Battle of Long Island, and it talks about principles and leadership principles. But I think people need to read up on different leaders from different aspects of different sides of the aisle, I guess, because there were leaders, that are sort of the negative leaders in history that talked about the lessons that they learned. And there's also really positive leaders. Like, I'm a big fan of George Patton as an example. If for lack of getting any orders, act, right? I mean, get in there and act. But I think reading is something that we've lost. It's an art, and there are plenty of places where people can look and read about leadership principles, and then take those principles and reflect on yourself. So when you're reading them and you're studying leadership, reflect on whether or not you have those skills and those capabilities. And then you can take those and you can implement them through, I think, one of the great characteristics of a great leader, of the greatest leaders, is humility. I think humility is an underrated character trait, right? And I do think that the great leaders, it doesn't mean that you're not confident. It doesn't mean that you're not skilled. It doesn't mean that you're not tough. It just means that when you lead with humility. And I think leading with humility is a great piece of advice to give to anybody that is looking to step into a role, whether it's to run for office or run for, or go become the president of the glee club or whatever. I mean, it doesn't matter. Make sure that you understand who you are and what your own set of skills are, and study about leadership, because even the big leadership principles that are out there, they still matter at the local level. And I think that those are really important advice.
Wow, thank you. Permit me 1 second. I got to show you and my audience one thing before you go.
All right, James.
You were talking about George Washington. I just finished reading this for the second time.
Beautiful.
There are so many lessons to be learned from our founding fathers when it comes to leadership. Imagine just taking people that just wanted to live their lives and didn't want to have the boot of tyranny from across the pond, and what they did and the sacrifices they made. So I love Dave McCullough, one of my favorite authors, but I appreciate you saying that, because I have been reading about George Washington specifically, this and a couple other books.
Yeah, amazing. I mean, just amazing. A person like George Washington, he took us through what I call the first arc of U.S. history. And without George Washington, we wouldn't be having this conversation.
Yes. And talk about humility, bringing it full circle. After his 2 terms, there were no term limits. He walked away.
Right.
And showed true humility and leadership. General Flynn, I am so grateful that you were here. There's so many more questions I have for you, and I hope at a time, not in the too distant future, I can pick your brain on other things as well.
Let's do that. I really enjoy you. I love you and your audience, and I want to make sure that we stay in touch. Yep, that's great. That's great.
Thanks again.